Welcome to the annual E3 podcast, 4th year in a row. We're back. I'm your host, Andrea. With me as always is Tommy Hodakowski.
Hallo, ich bin live aus Berlin.
Yeah, and Adam Owen. He's for the first time.
Hello, everyone.
And also special guest, Conrad Zimmerman.
Hello.
So, E3 is going on, and this is the first time we're doing a podcast together, Conrad. So tell the listeners a bit about yourself.
Well, I don't know. I'm unemployed. I mean, I'm an unemployed games critic. I used to write for Destructoid and produce video content, things for that. I work with Jonathan Holmes on the game designer podcast Sup Holmes, and yeah, I'm into games, and I'm on the Dismal Jesters podcast with Jonathan Holmes and Jim Sterling. And so, yeah, apart from that, I'm doing nothing but just sort of basking in E3 as someone who doesn't have any real responsibilities associated with it, which is kind of nice for a change.
I can imagine it being a very nice change of pace to not have to worry about schedules and rushing to conferences and stuff.
And it's still exhausting. That's the thing. I'm just sitting in, I'm literally wearing what I would wear to do laundry in, right? I'm in the most comfortable clothes imaginable. I'm in my own environment. I'm watching streams of the press conferences, which I think is really the only way to cover the show at this point. Yeah. And I'm beat. I'm beat. I've done nothing but tweet all day.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I started watching live streams of conferences back in, I think it was 2005 or something. For E3, and it's just been escalating since then on how much it's tiring. We're not even finished with the pre-E3 day, and I already feel like I never want to watch another conference again.
Yeah, I mean, every year I kind of hear from all sorts of press people, the more people stop going to the event itself, the more happy they seem to be about E3 in general, that they're just not going, and it's so wonderful.
It's wonderful when you're there and in the moment. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's really exciting, and you don't notice. And maybe that's it. Maybe just being at home, I'm noticing how much more tiring it is, because I really don't have anywhere to go until, the next press conference starts and I sit down in front of my computer. But the emotional toll is just tiring. It's excitement constantly in these short bursts. One press conference after the next, and so you get an hour and a half of downtime where you're sitting around processing everything that was just sort of shoved into your brain.
At the same time, trying to follow along with what's happening on all the different live streams and announcements between. I had no idea that they were showing the new Alien game right after the EA conference, so I had to pause and switch over that. Yeah, they showed that on the game trailers. It looked really cool.
Totally missed it. Didn't see it. Yep. No idea.
No, you can't catch it all. I have 4 monitors up in this room, and I can't catch it all.
Well, this is going to be an interesting episode for me because I've looked at the EA stream, but as far as Microsoft is concerned, I have no idea what happened, and I actually didn't even.
This is going to be your introduction to the Microsoft E3 conference.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
Is going to be
because
interesting.
I think when it was happening, I was enjoying German beer at a Big Lebowski themed pub, which is a thing in Berlin, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have as you walk in, there's a bowling lane, but it's actually riveted to the ceiling.
And that is pretty cool.
I was prepared to start a "you monster, how could you not care about Microsoft at E3" joke, but then you said that, and I thought, oh shit, you are actually living the life.
But yeah, Microsoft E3, the big thing that happened right at the start, a couple of hours ago now. A lot of surprising announcements, if you ask me, and I figured we would sort of go through our favorite announcement to start with. So, Conrad, I think you had a very special one.
Oh, well, I mean, it's a real left field kind of an announcement, but Microsoft is going to be publishing a remake of Phantom Dust, which is it's an original Xbox game. It came at sort of the end of that console's life cycle, and it's kind of I guess the best way to describe it is that if you were playing a collectible card game, but actually wielding all the spells in the deck in a physical environment, that's what Phantom Dust is like.
It was a big surprise, especially seeing as, I mean, I don't know if they mentioned any developer or anything, but the original developer, of course, was the creator of Panzer Dragoon.
Right, yeah.
Who recently worked with Microsoft on Crimson Dragon. And then
and they had
Club himself came out and surprised everyone with this.
Yeah, it was a complete shock, and yet it was also kind of indicative of a lot of what Microsoft did throughout this conference. It was very focused on IP they have, in a way that they hadn't really shown in a long time, I think. I don't think people realize how much IP is actually Microsoft's, to first party publish on that platform. We forget about it because they tried a few things here and there and then moved on. But here, we saw them, they brought out the hits, that Halo was obviously going to be a big focus for them there. But then,
absolutely,
you get the reminder, hey, Killer Instinct's still a thing, and that's, that was good. And Phantom Dust is something that nobody remembers that they own, but they're going to try that again. And in a post-Hearthstone environment, I can see that doing really, really well. Card-type games have been pretty big in the East for a long time, and they've slowly become more popular here in North America. I don't know how that's faring in Europe necessarily, but it's
expanding quite well here as well, actually.
Yeah, so I think
I know a few Magic players.
The time is good for it. Like the expansion of card games into digital was something that I never really thought would gain a foothold with Western audiences. And yet it has managed to do that very successfully. And this spin on it, it could be the right time to bring it back. They could make a ton of money on it. It's not a system seller. It is for me personally, because I have a lot of really strong attachment to that game. And I told my wife after the announcement, it's like, hey, we have to buy an Xbox One now. Like, it's, just out of respect for the gesture on Microsoft's part in putting that out. But
yeah, I think a lot of people actually pretty much felt that they got a reason to buy an Xbox One this conference, or at least one reason. Like, it seemed to be like there was something for everyone. Like, for me, the big game that really surprised me with how fun it looked was Sunset Overdrive.
Yes,
that was a big breath of fresh air. Just completely high octane, colorful fun, basically. Like when you have a game where you can like explode mutants with a mushroom cloud that literally spells out "boom" in the shadows of the clouds. Like I like that. That's nice.
So this is finally the continuation of 13 or C that I've always wanted.
Not really. It's more like, I mean, it's sort of like what Brink tried to do with the whole like arena, not really arena, but multiplayer parkouring, over the top stylized action thing, but done as a third person. I'm not really sure. It's almost a bit Crackdown-ish.
What I find fascinating about Sunset Overdrive is how everyone is trying to, I don't know, pigeonhole isn't the word, but how everyone's trying to define it.
Yeah.
By comparing the sort of disparate elements of other games that you can say vaguely resemble it. Like, this was going on as the conference was going on. I was watching my Twitter feed and even participating in this way because I compared it to Jet Set Radio and something else, but everybody was doing this. And like, as you described it, just for a moment, I said, well, I was thinking to myself, maybe a little more Vanquish feel than that, but there are so many different game elements that you can draw from them that's making a really unique product there, and nobody really knows how to identify it yet, which I think is really interesting.
It's definitely something. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just think I've only just sort of thought about this recently, but I'd say it's a natural evolution from Ratchet and Clank.
I can see that.
It's a game that is very clearly from the creators of Ratchet and Clank. The way that the characters seem to move about on a screen, it reminded me a lot of that game, and that's probably why I dug it a lot.
I can see that. I mean, I'm a sucker for platforming shooters as well. Like the moment when they started playing and the camera zoomed out, it was a proper third person camera. It wasn't zoomed in. It wasn't the shoulder cam. It was like you can see your environment. You can jump around, have fun with it. I really enjoy that. So that was really nice. And I compared it to Crackdown, which was kind of funny, seeing as they after that revealed Crackdown 3, or just Crackdown, I guess it's called. Which that was something I did not expect. I thought the overall disappointment of the second game was going to basically leave that franchise sort of dead in the ground.
Well, I haven't really played any of the games, but isn't it more of a case of that was seen as an expansion? That was sold at full price.
Yeah.
Do we know who's working on it?
They said one of the original developers. As in one guy who was an original developer on the first Crackdown game.
There's one dude sitting in a room at Microsoft slowly working on it.
Crackdown is all style and no substance for me. It's a bit. The physics are really interesting, and it was a lot of fun to play the very first time you experience it, and you get that freedom of movement and that sense of every bit of progress is reflected in your character's abilities. Like, that was really cool the first time. But there was nothing else in that world that was particularly compelling. Like, the setting's not that interesting. The gangs aren't that... The agency is kind of... It's the agency voice is what makes the agency kind of interesting. And there's not much plot. And so then you see other games come along, like Prototype, that takes advantage of those same kinds of physics and does those sorts of things pretty well, and then wraps it in a sort of interesting, not great, mind you, but there's a little more setting, a little more material to work with that makes it more interesting. In Saints Row 4, the same kind of idea. It's still your sandbox, it's the same kinds of physics, but there's something more appealing to attach yourself to than just sort of this bland, here are these sort of themed gangs and this organization that you work for and the voice.
It very much feels like a prototype game for something that could evolve into something bigger, and unfortunately failed to do with the second game. Like, I would compare it to something like pretty much every first Ubisoft games these days, where like the first game it's a good idea and it's fun for the first few minutes, and then it sort of starts being a letdown. Then the sequel comes out and just fixes most of the problems. That's Assassin's Creed, essentially. Where the first game I could not enjoy at all, even though I loved the idea of it. And then the second game just solved all the issues. I felt that Crackdown should have gotten that treatment and didn't, and hopefully this new one can sort that out. Then, of course, there was a comparison to... I can imagine Saints Row 4 having more than a little influence on this new one.
Well, someone pointed out that Saints Row seemed to have a lot of influence on quite a few games that was shown.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Capcom's DLC for Dead Rising 3 was pretty much what would happen if they made a Saints Row game.
What was that called again?
I couldn't remember that.
Super Ultra Hyper Dead Rising 3 apostrophe Hyper Edition Alpha. I don't remember the rest. It was every Capcom subtitle ever just put onto the game, which was kind of funny.
I had a really just gut negative reaction to that whole thing.
Really?
I don't know. Man, maybe I just felt like they're trying too hard. Capcom's always been, fond of doing their weird mashup stuff. But the trailer that they showed, I just looked at it and I thought, are you trying to give me some kind of throwback Blood Dragon hype thing? I don't know. It did not appeal to me at all.
For me, it was the fact that it seemed to be more structured like a beat 'em up, almost like a Final Fight game, but with the Rising cast, which I found very interesting. Now, how that will actually pan out is different. I guess we'll know because it's out now. But the biggest disappointment for me was that it wasn't a separate game like Case West and Case Zero was. It's a DLC pack for Dead Rising 3, which sort of. I mean, if I'm already getting Dead Rising 3 in the new PC release, so I won't get that again for my Xbox One if I get one. So,
well,
I don't know.
It kind of seemed like Capcom trying to make up for the initial reaction to Dead Rising 3. As in, Dead Rising was...
the E3 reaction?
Yeah, as in, Dead Rising was very famous as this wacky zombie game where you can dress up as Mega Man at different points. And the initial reaction to Dead Rising 3 was, oh, they've turned it into a grey-brownish.
Which they sort of hadn't, but the E3 demo did make it seem like it.
Well, I think what Dead Rising always did effectively was create a very sort of serious, threatening environment with a sense of playfulness to it. And
I felt that with the first few games, but I don't know, with Case, what's that game called? The second Dead Rising 2 game they released with Frank West in the main role. That was one I felt tried too hard. I just could not get into it at all.
Yeah, I
don't know what it's called.
I think if it's too much in one direction or the other, it doesn't work. Like Dead Rising doesn't work when it feels really dark and oppressive and serious all the time. But it equally wouldn't work for me if it was just a goofy whack zombie around game all the time. Dead Rising 2 came close to pushing that line a bit because of how crazy it got. And there's just the premise of the reality show and all of that kind of pushed the boundaries of it, but it didn't cross it. And this DLC to me is just like, there's nothing particularly appealing about that.
Another big surprise this year was Scalebound by Hideki Kamiya.
This one was probably the one that... I mean, last year I was really excited for Sunset Overdrive, and everyone's saying, don't get excited, it's just a trailer, a pre-rendered trailer at that. This was the same sort of thing. I really like the look of Scalebound.
To me, it was just like, it was basically Hideki Kamiya going on stage and showing off the game to everyone who complained to him about the new Dante in Devil May Cry, by just making Dante's hair white and then having him fight dragons instead.
Well, it seemed a lot like what would happen if Platinum Games made a Monster Hunter game.
I can see that, yeah. I'm just excited to see how it plays, if it's going to play like Bayonetta, or if it's going to be a whole new style of gameplay, because that's the thing with Platinum, is you can never really figure out how their games are going to play until you get to play them.
Yeah.
Like, I remember looking at Vanquish so many times thinking, oh, that looks like a pretty standard cover shooter with some sliding mechanics, I'll enjoy that. And then I actually picked it up, and it was not your standard cover game at all. It was a bullet hell, basically. But that was a big surprise. Not sure how I just can't believe that after the initial reactions of the exclusive games to the Nintendo platform that they put out, they're now putting out an exclusive Microsoft game next. It's almost like they just want to see how many fans on the other side they can piss off this time.
Well, I kind of see it as, for the first time in quite a long time, I'm confident Microsoft are looking out for good games to have on their system. Same sort of thing with Sunset Overdrive, which was being made by Insomniac, a very famous PlayStation company. I mean, it was only really Fuse that was the first multi-platform title, and now Microsoft have... I assume they've helped out with the funding for Sunset Overdrive.
Can we talk about how funny it is that the entire trailer, or the opening trailer bit for Sunset Overdrive was making fun of cover-based shooters, and they made Fuse?
It did sort of make me wish the Deadpool game was as funny as that.
Yeah, I like that trailer. It was funny. But now back on Sunset Overdrive. They showed some cool indie games. The new game by the Limbo developer.
I was...
Inside.
Inside, yes. Which looks like Another World, except you play Another World and Heart of Darkness. So
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Basically,
now I'm interested.
It looks really cool.
I mean, it looks like Limbo in color to a certain extent too. I mean, it's muted colors and a little bit of high contrast. And there's part of me that's kind of getting tired of this.
Yeah.
Like I've seen enough of these sort of indie platformers where your character moves kind of slower and it's dramatic, and there's been a real glut of them over the last 5 years, or at least
that is true,
at least more than I think the market merits. But
Yeah,
it's
the
the
trailer looks
Limbo
cool.
people. It's probably going to be
Yeah.
good.
I mean, it was one of the big things from the conference overall that I was happy with when they started showing off all the trailers for the indie games, and I was just like, well, finally, Microsoft get it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because all the games looked very different. Did you see the game Cuphead, which looked like an old Disney style?
Oh yeah, is that still a
cartoon?
thing?
That's
Yeah,
still a
this
thing.
is coming to Xbox.
It
Okay,
happened
that's
last year
cool.
at PlayStation's conference, and it's happened again. These indie games really benefit from E3.
Yeah,
As in, a lot of people were already aware Evolve existed or The Witcher existed. I mean, they looked
I forgot
fantastic.
they showed Evolve.
They sort of look all right, and there are people out there who are really excited for them. But when an indie game is shown at that conference, I mean, one of the early ones they showed was a game called Ori and the Blind Forest.
Mm.
This
Yeah.
looks.
Oh yes.
I adore all sorts of 2D drawn animation in video games, and it looked absolutely fantastic. I'm very excited for that.
It looked like an UbiArt game, but it wasn't. That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
I mean, those are reasons why I would attach myself to a console, and there were a lot of good reasons to get an Xbox One, according to this whole conference. And
Well, they made a wise decision in this E3 conference to focus entirely on games. It was all game content. There was no TV stuff, no multimedia stuff. They got that out of the way a week ago. And I think that's a big problem that Microsoft has had with their E3 conferences for the last several years, is that they treat it more like a CES conference. That, look at all of the things our device can do. But that's not traditionally what E3 has been about. E3 is about the video game business. And so by sort of getting those announcements out of the way and focusing entirely on the game product that they're going to be putting out this year and next, I think they made an incredibly smart decision.
Absolutely, and also the fact that when they did, the very little time they spent outside of games, they still linked the two games. And when they announced the Halo TV series arriving with the Halo Master Chief Collection.
Yeah.
yeah, if we can turn the conversation to that Halo thing, I would buy an Xbox One for that. I'm
torn on that one because at first when they mentioned it, I was like, yeah, I'll buy it just for Halo 4 because I really like Halo 4. Then they said the multiplayer is Halo 2, and I didn't like Halo 2. But Halo 5 beta, so...
Also keep in mind that the first 3 Halos have the Flood in it, and nobody needs to play those sections again.
Well, I think the thing is, I've only ever played Halo every now and then at a friend's house, as in very haphazardly, and I've stolen my brother's Xbox 360 for a little bit, and now I'm playing his copy of Halo 1. It's alright so far, but if I can play all of them at the best possible quality on the Xbox One, that sounds like a really good deal.
Well, and how far back are we from the original Halo in terms of years?
15 out of 10?
I mean, that's
13, I think.
That's a whole other generation of gamers.
12, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that it is literally another generation getting the opportunity to sort of experience this, finger quotes, epic, from start to present. And
the saga of Master Chief.
And everybody, has heard about Halo. They might, those kids might not have played the past games, but this will be a great entry point for them. And I think it's going to do exceptionally well.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's going to be... I can already see there being an Xbox One bundle with it. That is going to help sell a lot.
And
depending on when the console launches here in Europe, in the rest of Europe, so to say.
Yeah, I was actually wondering, hey, what about Scandinavia, guys?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, but actually, now that you mentioned it, I will, once they finally release the thing and it will actually have this Halo thing bundle, that's how I will probably grab it. I mean, the 360 I have is the ODST bundle, so worked for me once.
I will switch the topic yet again, just to mention a thing that I just saw on Twitter just now. They announced, of course, the worst title of the conference, name-wise, Rise of the Tomb Raider, which is the next Tomb Raider game. And Camille Lovington has confirmed that it's her in the trailer, and there's a lot of cool stuff, and she is looking forward to sharing more of it. And of course, another Lara Croft game was announced at the same time, but not shown at the press conference. A 4-player co-op sequel to Lara Croft and the previous game. Whatever that was called.
Guardian of Light.
Guardian of Light, that was one.
Although I like Lara Croft in the previous game more.
Yeah. So we have 2 Tomb Raider games coming up, both sequels to very, very well-received games. I personally loved last year's Tomb Raider way more than I thought, because that was a game I went into expecting not to like, because I thought the trailers did a bad job of, well, pretty much doing anything, and came out absolutely loving it, and I'm glad to see Crystal Dynamics working on the sequel now.
Yeah, so
even if it's named The Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Yeah, I liked it a lot, despite Square Enix's and Crystal Dynamics' best efforts.
Yeah, I mean, I saw on Twitter recently that Rhianna Pratchett will be returning to scriptwriting duties, and, well, that I'm really happy with.
Well,
that is good too.
Hopefully just we won't have any press mystery button not to get assaulted in a very uncomfortable way again.
I would assume they've learned.
That.
I would assume they've learned from all of that, but you never really know.
Seeing as like the last 75% of that game is completely different from the first 15, I would expect so. But that was cool. Not any gameplay for it, but it's just a CG trailer but still enough for me to get excited for that. I don't know, Conrad, did you play the latest Tomb Raider?
I started playing it with my wife because I thought that there would be something that she'd be interested in witnessing. And we played it like 1 or 2 nights, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting, but it didn't hook me in a particularly powerful way, and I'd like to get back to it at some point. I loved Guardian of Light, and I'm excited to see that they are going to do another game like that. But I mean, that doesn't have to be a Lara Croft Tomb Raider game. That could be anything. You could have put any characters into that framework, whereas the Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider sequel, that I'll be interested to see where they do it, and just to have that Lara Croft character in play again is good, because we need more great female protagonist characters. We need more great female characters in games in general, and she's a pretty strong case for that. So
and it seems they're going very heavily into character development, going by the trailer as well. Focusing on her on her dealing with what she experienced in the first game. And actually, speaking of female protagonists, that was something I was really impressed by on EA's side, but on both conferences that went on before this. Dragon Age Inquisition, all the trailers and promotional material are using the female main character, unlike previous games where the male character has been standard.
No, they learned something.
Yeah.
I think they learned that chances are people aren't going to get that upset by having a woman on the cover, but they're going to get really upset if you never have a woman on the cover.
Yeah.
Rhianna Pratchett is not happy about Mirror's Edge now, I see on Twitter, apparently. So let's talk about Mirror's Edge.
She's not involved, I guess.
Apparently she's upset that DICE is ignoring all the comics material that gave Faith her backstory in this new one. To make up their own backstory.
That's unfortunate, but I can't get... Mirror's Edge is a game I can't even play.
Same.
I would love to watch Mirror's Edge, I think. I think I'd like to sort of get into that world. I think there's a lot of potential for the setting that they created there. And the characters could be very interesting, but I can't get past 10 minutes of playing it to find that out. That's just me personally. And it's no fault of the game or people who love it, because clearly there is something there for people to enjoy.
Let me just save you the time and tell you that you won't find that out with playing the game either. It's like...
Oh, God.
At least I do not recall any sort of questions that I've had about, so how did this world came to be? What governs the rules? I mean, why are the things the way they are? Why does this character, is this character so keen on running everywhere? It's just like, okay, here's some expository cutscenes in between levels, and that's your lot.
That's disappointing. I'd like it to.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, this world is so ripe with like just the existence of this world and the state that it's in. That fires up so many interesting questions, and I want to see them answered, and I just don't want them to waste that opportunity again.
And it's not fair to have to read material outside of the game just to get a character's main backstory, I feel, either. At least not when it's something that's literally just one game. Well, okay, 2 games if you count the side-scroller spin-off.
But that actually wants me to ask you, how would you count like the manuals that you used to have, where there was backstory?
Okay. Well, you got those supplemented with the game at least, so
You don't have
I would
to
argue
make
that
your own
you
research, basically.
you didn't have to go and buy like if you're going to play Doom, you don't need to buy Daffodil Hughes novels to understand the game. That's what I'm saying. You can, but yeah,
Are we talking
you
about?
should. It's a good novel.
Are we talking about EA's conference now?
If you want to. I was going to mention Call of Duty, but I don't really have anything to say apart from me being excited because it's Call of Duty.
I mean, all I was really happy about was that Kevin Spacey showed up.
I love that crossing over podcasts here now, but whatever. The tagline for the game is
Power is everything.
Power is everything. Kevin Spacey is in the game. I could not stop laughing at that. But no, it looks fun, like having jump packs and mech suits and laser rifles and ripping off car doors to use as shields. No, I can get behind this. I like stupid, over-the-top sci-fi military stuff.
Well,
it felt like a sequel to Quake Wars without the aliens.
Well, I always prefer Call of Duty when it's like Black Ops, as in when it's taken advantage of all these, specifically Black Ops 2, where it's taken advantage of all these silly ideas for what gadgets in the future might be, and Advanced Warfighter. No, wait, that's not his name.
That's not Advanced Warfare. That's the one.
Yeah, that one. But yeah, it's
Advanced Wars.
Call of Duty Advanced Wars would be my favorite game ever, but that's not happening. But yeah, I mean, it sounds.
You could do that actually, and they could release that on iOS and Android.
That would be the best way for Nintendo to sell a console, is have Activision collaborate on a Wii U exclusive Call of Duty Advance Wars.
Well, it would make me buy a Wii U for stars, but yeah, I mean, this seems like fun. It's I don't usually understand much of a hate towards Call of Duty outside of the obvious popularity thing to do with it, but yeah, it looks fun.
I can understand the hate behind Ghost, because that game was a mess.
They generally feel like well-constructed games that people put a lot of money behind. And there's that's fine. It isn't a game just because the shooty multiplayer game isn't something that interests me that much to play. But that's never prevented me from looking at it and saying objectively, hey, this is really clever. Like, there's good stuff there. The progression system that Modern Warfare 2 implemented is still, being resonated throughout the industry today, and it was well made.
Yeah, it's hard to find a shooter these days that just use some sort of perk system, and in most of the time very well. Like Wolfenstein: The New Order has a very fun perk system that I don't think would have been there if Call of Duty hadn't been around there first. So yeah, but you want to talk about EA, Adam? I mean, yes, you want to talk about Battlefront.
Well, I mean, the problem is that I want to talk about EA because I think it's one of the weakest press conferences I've seen in a long time.
I thought it was okay, but a lot of people didn't like it. I noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, my problem with it was it seemed like EA didn't have any material for a press conference. It seemed like, because I mean, not every company does a giant press conference thing. Usually because they only have 3 or 4 games to show, and it seemed like EA knew that they didn't have any games to show, but they had a big arena and they had a time slot in order to show games, and they thought, what could we do? Let's show prototypes for games that we are starting.
It's like they were showing documentary footage of the games we have started development on, basically, which apparently, if I understand correctly, is EA's new way of doing things, because I was listening to an interview with Criterion Games, who's making their new racing game, which is a whole world of racing anything, basically. Helicopters, scooters, whatever. And that was a conceptual demo. And in the interview, they said basically that they said it was their new way of doing games, but I'm guessing they meant EA because almost every game was like that at the EA's conference. To basically be able to gather player input from the very start.
Well, it didn't really seem like something EA did by choice. It seemed like something they were forced to do because they had nothing ready in the near future, so they have to get BioWare to just promise a new game.
Yeah, okay, yeah. When they announced we have 2 new BioWare titles, and the second one was, we at BioWare are making another game, and that was it.
And that was basically No Man's Sky BioWare edition, from the looks of it.
But no, they didn't show anything for the BioWare. Like, they showed Mass Effect. The new Mass Effect, they showed a conceptual demo of that. And I was like, this is a new Mass Effect. It doesn't have Shepard in it. And that was that. And they were like, and we're making another game. Bye. Next developer.
Well, they were talking big about creating a new world that you can do something in. But as I mentioned, I mostly looked at the conference without listening because at some points, my ears were overloaded with buzzwords, and even Apple conferences are kind of hard for me to take in. But I can still kind of manage their use of like sugar talking and buzzwords. But this was just way too much.
Well, Tommy, let me just tell you this: that football is the greatest drama that exists.
Yeah, I did know. Well, okay, so I had to watch in like mobile quality, so I either saw like PS2 quality of video or something that looked kind of live action, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a mix of live action.
Okay,
so I'm assuming in engine,
because I thought that if I understand correctly, like for every like at least of the EA Sport lineup, for every like in-game trailer they've had, they also had live action because, as Adam mentioned, okay, we have to fill up the time somehow.
Yeah, like when they decided to show stock footage of Bruce Lee before showing the Bruce Lee fight.
And but I do recall that they started with saying like, "Oh, we're putting the gamers in front and whatnot." And my first thought was, then how do you explain Dungeon Keeper on mobile? But then I realized, oh yeah, they are putting the gamers in front of a paywall.
At least they did. At least they didn't announce any new mobile remakes of their previous franchises.
Yeah, but you know what? If they wanted to, they might as well, because that at least they would have the material. But okay, just to get to like the games proper, I was pretty curious about that Criterion Racing game because it made me think of Big Red Racing, which is like an old, I think even DOS racing game where you had, well, non-standard vehicles. Let me just put it like that. Like you had Jeeps, hovercrafts, bikes, all that sort of stuff. So if it's at all like that, then I'll be very much looking forward to it.
I mean, it's a Criterion game, so I'm interested in it because I feel they sort of do get racing and stuff like that really well. Burnout Paradise still feels one of the most fun car games of the last generation. But I think if anything, like the way they structured the conference was probably the weakest thing for me because they sort of bundled all the sports games together in the middle like they normally do. Then they took a break from sports games and showed Mirror's Edge, and then went back to sports games. I don't think they should have done that. I think they should have just constantly gone between sports and non-sports games because you don't really get the same audience, which is very noticeable on Twitter when that happens. Or you should have just kept all the sports games together. Because I feel when Mirror's Edge 2 was shown, people were finally happy, and then immediately after that they go to FIFA and.
But FIFA's a way of life. It's not just a game. You can't just lump that in with all of the other sports stuff.
That's true. It's not fiction. Apparently,
I'm the UK representative. It is a way of life. They were not joking when they said that.
Yeah, I am in Germany, and that's also a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, over here, we don't give a shit, right? Here in the United States, we do not care. But everywhere else on Earth, I'm led to understand soccer's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I'm surprised they used the word football for it when they already talked about Madden previously. Like, it gets really confusing for a second. Like, wait, you already talked about the football. Oh, European football, okay.
Well, this
But
is a...
if I'm not
Sorry.
mistaken, isn't the FIFA team in Canada?
No, the NHL team is in Canada, I believe. Why do I know that?
Well, because
Because you-
everything hockey is Canadian. Like, if it's
Yeah.
hockey and it's not Canadian, why are you bothering?
Plus, I think
Yeah,
I remember
fair
them
point.
saying at one point, the moment we've all been waiting for is to see what NHL is going to look like in HD next gen. We've been very much anticipating all of this. I'm sorry, I'm the sort of person... On Twitter, I'm the sort of person who just kept posting the Tim and Eric sketch over and over every time sports came up. That's me.
Well, that's probably the only proper reaction.
I did like, however, that I saw people 5 minutes into the conference telling EA to follow Microsoft's example of showing games instead of what they were doing. At that point, they'd shown more games at the EA conference than Microsoft had. I do feel it was a lot of decided pre-conference start of, yeah, we're not going to like this conference.
Well, I think the thing was most of them were prototypes and concepts and
Sure.
promises.
Battlefront, I'm glad Battlefront was a prototype, because when they announced they were going to show Battlefront, I got scared, because that game hasn't been in development for a year yet. 'Cause last year when it was announced at E3, they hadn't even picked which DICE studio to start working on it. So if they were going to show like a live demonstration of gameplay, I would have been really scared of how rushed that game would be.
I kind of feel like it was announced a bit too early. As in... And I got the feeling with several EA games where I don't think it should have been announced last year. If they wanted to try and really wow people this year, they should have waited a bit for Mirror's Edge and Battlefront. And
It doesn't help that last year they just showed Mirror's Edge, and this year like Mirror's Edge conceptual prototype. So
maybe they could have waited a bit before showing what Criterion are doing, other than
yeah,
other than demonstrating that, hey, we've laid off a lot of people here. we now work above a pub. Please.
Yeah, I feel sad for Criterion. But then there was of course the big game at the end, Battlefield Hardline, which is the most insane, stupid game of cops and robbers I've ever seen. And the property damage in that game is wow.
Well, it was Michael Bay's Heat.
It was Man of Steel level of mass destruction that was going on.
Oh, I want to say that I'm both excited and very cautious about that, because Battlefield 4 also demoed oh so well. But
Yeah.
if it won't be the case with this, then consider me sold, because oh dear, I want in on this. As long as it works like presented. Like,
Well,
that's the caveat.
I assume that's why they made such a big deal out of the public beta.
Hopefully, I signed up for it, but I haven't gotten my email reply yet.
I'm fine either way.
Yeah, no, I find it looked kind of fun. I mean, I like the Battlefield games in general. I like team-based multiplayer, and I love vehicles in games, so it's always been sort of my thing. And I also like playing as cops in games, so I got that. Even though I don't think cops should be ramming helicopters into buildings. But,
That's the thing. It's like it's so over the top, and like the property destruction element of it makes it kind of hit home a little harder, I think, because the idea of Payday. I love Payday. Payday's a great game. It's a good heist simulation. Payday ends the minute you make it out of the place that you're robbing.
Yeah.
This doesn't end when you leave that. And it becomes this sort of almost rampage type thing through the city. And there's something about that makes me feel weird. Like,
I can see that. I mean, it's...
I don't know if it's just because we've had so many recent outbreaks of violence in the United States that, you know, I'm suddenly more keen to that being possibly a problem. The other thing that people brought up when I was talking with them is the racial element is almost going to be inescapable here in the U.S.
That is very true, yeah.
Like-
and it's going to be inescapable here as well. I will tell you that much.
I can't see how they can do it and not offend people on a racial level somehow, because you can't make everybody all white. That means there's no diversity. But you can't make anybody non-white and a criminal without it being perceived as a stereotype. And so they're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation, and it's scary.
It's I think the problem there comes from the fact that it's going to be a single player campaign by Visceral, and they're gonna have characters in that, which has never really worked well for Battlefield. But I guess Bad Company did it pretty good. But I mean, in the multiplayer section, if they just have character customization, and it's technically off their hands, but it will still be there. It will still be a problem. And I think how does Payday handle that actually?
They don't make a thing of it.
Yeah.
Frankly, I mean, there's no.
Well, I assume there's a reason why everyone's in masks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also you don't play on both sides either, so it doesn't really become the same thing. Yeah, that can be a big problem, and it will be interesting to see how they tackle it, if they tackle it.
I would not want to be their community manager. That's all. I mean, the mail that person's gonna get.
Oh, yeah. I'll be interested in seeing the response to the game when it's out, as in when we find out whether it's a lot more linear than perhaps the trailer made it out to be.
I mean, the trailer was so scripted.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering myself. Like, how do you have to know specifically where are the points at which you can do the environmental destruction? Like, is this just going to be heists and nothing more?
The Battlefield 4 multiplayer demonstration, I bought that they were playing that and it actually was live, because like the only really big set piece was the end when they blew up the building, and I could see them preparing that throughout the match. But this one, where like every time someone died, it switched a new perspective, which were in perfect locations to start shooting at the next guy, and it was one guy left in the end, and no, especially with the buildings. Like, oh, he goes up the elevator, all of a sudden there's snipers on the roof, exactly next to that building. Like, no.
I got the same sense during the Microsoft press conference when the Assassin's Creed game was being shown.
Oh yes, absolutely. Which I forgot existed.
I have been involved in enough cooperative games with people that I know really, really well and could make a plan to execute effectively that never go anywhere close to that smoothly.
Yeah, I was thinking about Splinter Cell's co-op, and was it Conviction, I think, had co-op? I would play it out with a friend a lot, and we would always try to be like stealthy and plan out and clamp around and figure out how we're going to take it out. It would never really go according to plan. And you look at this, when they're just jumping around and everything goes smoothly, like, and especially when they have stuff like the guards being ordered around by other people, and
well, it was so perfectly choreographed. You know, guy goes to the door and, you know, gets the guy that's standing on the other side of it with his back turned, and then just as smooth as butter, the next assassin just walks through the doorway like nothing happened. You know, the perfect timing of it all. It was either done from muscle memory, from having done this exact thing hundreds of times, or it's a steaming load of crap. And I gotta be honest with you,
it's Ubisoft.
I gotta lean in one direction on this one.
That said, I think it could be interesting to see how Assassin's Creed works in co-op, though.
I always saw that as a single-player game, what with how intricate you need to organize every single assassination. And that goes completely out of the window when even just one person on your team does not feel like doing it the smart, safe way.
Yeah, that's the kind of game I'll be like hardcore managing to make sure that my co-players are like, okay, we're RPing this,
and I will be the one just jumping in the middle of the whole field, butchering my way through everything.
I just want it to be Peace Walker style, so you can all hide in the same pile of hay at the same time. That's all I want.
You know, that reminds me, like, ages ago, the first Rainbow Six, when it came out, I was able to... One mission I played with just having planned it, and then the AI took care of everything. I didn't have to touch a single thing. The mission just succeeded. But I guess that's because they mandate such a heavy action focus, we can't have that sort of game.
I'll be honest, now that I think about it, Rainbow Six Vegas 2, I had done some really amazing co-op jobs in terrorist hunt in that game with friends from muscle memory, basically, just learning the level and really it becomes sort of almost choreographed. Like we stop even talking to each other and just sort of start going through the level, meeting each other in certain spots. I can see that work in Assassin's Creed as well, but that said, this is part of the main campaign. This is the main storyline, apparently. This is going to be the main game, and that worries me more, if anything.
I don't like it's something personal. I don't like playing games with people a lot of the time. I mean, if they're not sitting on the couch next to me, or across the table from me or something like that. Online gaming does very, very little for me. Online coordinating people is even less appealing to me. So
yeah,
I think that was a thing about the Microsoft press conference in general. Co-op seemed to be the big focus.
There was that kept popping up. There were a lot of co-op things, unless for years and years it's been competitive gaming at the forefront and cooperative gaming as hey, this is nice. But here, I think we saw a pretty even division.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Fables.
Speaking of the division,
we'll do that one first.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I'm getting more and more worried about that game every time I see it.
It doesn't look as revolutionary as I think everyone was saying it was.
I've seen that game being played live in front of me, like just inches away from the person playing it on the screen, and I was impressed, but every time I see it, I'm less impressed. It's just, I don't know, and it keeps getting delayed further and further. I don't know. I hope it's good. That's the thing. It's also Ubisoft, and I've become so disappointed in Ubisoft lately.
Well, at the very least, you can be certain that Division 2 will be a little bit better.
That is true. With that, I think we need to sort of close out this thing, because Ubisoft's press conference, thing enough, is about to start up in 5 minutes.
Could I just get a final word on Fable Legends?
Oh, right.
As a final word on that,
I have one final word after that, so sure, go ahead.
Well, I just saw the trailer and thought, okay, so they're going to do Fable, but with co-op. How are they going to do that? And then I saw how you can play as the villain, and you can essentially just play Orcs Must Die. So that's how they're doing that. I
just want to point out how upset I was at the Conquer reveal.
Oh!
I
was wondering who was going to mention Conquer.
I forgot about it until now. Like, Price Spark, that looked pretty cool. Like, that looked really interesting. Oh, there's Conquer. Oh, they're announcing a new Conquer. Oh, no, they're not.
No, they're just shoving Conquer in there. And that's... Oh, Project Spark is another one of those things that I think is great for other people. Like, I'm not really into building my own entertainment. I think that there are a lot of people who are. I think there will be great stuff made for it. But I'm also not the sort of person who likes to, browse through the entertainment other people build that much. I stopped doing mods a long time ago. So it's, for the most part, that product doesn't appeal to me. And then Conquer, who does appeal to me, to just see him thrown into that. And like, the way in which they're like, well, they won't let me make a game for me, so why don't you do it? Fuck you.
Yeah. I mean, I remember way back when, near the end of the Nintendo 64, when we had to save up £100 just to get a cartridge for Conker's Bad Fur Day. So this is a character that I've loved for a long time.
And that was worth it. That was a worthwhile investment, wasn't it?
You're
happy having spent that money.
We spent about 70 hours on the multiplayer alone. I am pretty certain that was one of the best multiplayer modes possible.
Yeah. But overall, Microsoft conference, it was good. I enjoyed it.
I came out of that thinking, well, maybe an Xbox One would be a good idea. So Microsoft did their thing.
They did the job.
Yeah. And this has been us. Now, let's see. Conrad, you have a Twitter?
Yeah, it's at Conrad Zimmerman.
Tommy?
It's at Tomalinsky.
Adam?
I am at Adam Owen FTW.
And I'm at Andrea_Ritsu. And thank you for listening to the E3 podcast, the first part. We'll be back with Sony after a few hours. Bye!